Joining us right now here on the show, and this is an absolute treat for us, the legendary host of ESPN's College Game Day and ESPN's College Game Day podcast, the great Rece Davis, who you can find on Twitter at his name, at Rece Davis. Rece, it's Nick Costos and Ken Barkley. We really appreciate you making the time. Our mutual friend Tim Scanlon says hello, by the way. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Everything's going great, and there's not a better guy around than Scan. So any friend of his are friends of mine, so it's good to talk to you guys.
Scan, a friend of both of us, Rece, and great to have you on the show. You worked at ESPN for like a really long time, have watched Game Day for a really long time, so awesome to talk to you. I would say wow, a lot of great games this weekend. Let's get into it. I do want to ask you about Michigan to start, just because it's been such a dominant story. And for bettors too, Rece, we're all kind of sitting here. I bet a lot of Michigan to win the national championship at the start of the season in the first few weeks. Thought that maybe they could be the best team this year. We're waiting for this Big Ten punishment. Not sure what that's going to be. Maybe insignificant. Waiting to see if anything from the NCAA. Maybe that doesn't take, until the end of the year. Should I be worried at all? Whether it's title, Heisman with McCarthy, any impact on Michigan of these NCAA potential sanctions or the Big Ten stuff?
I kind of think it remains to be seen, and I don't mean to be dodging the answer because much like you, I picked Michigan they were number one in my AP preseason poll. Now, I don't have them number one right now, but that's only because they haven't been tested at all. And I still suspect they're the best team, but I need to see them play somebody that can fog a competent mirror. And, they finally get a chance to do that this weekend. So I think they're really good. I suspect they might be the best team in the country. But this is one of those situations, guys, you've seen it a lot in sports. These types of things are galvanizing to a team until they're not. Meaning it pulls everybody together, and then if it is a situation that chips away and chips away and chips away, then sometimes you maybe run into a situation where you don't perform your best, or maybe that won't happen at all. I don't think there's going to be any resolution from the NCAA standpoint, and with the articles that have been written recently and Michigan's determination to do everything to avoid any punishment from the Big Ten at this moment, I'm not sure it's going to have a big impact on the field. At least not yet. I don't see any indication that would dissuade me from picking Michigan to win games.
The fog, a competent mirror is. I may have to steal that one. Maybe not even give proper attribution, Rece, honestly, because it's such a good line here. So do you think Michigan's you know what? I actually said it earlier in the show, and I just forgot. Yeah. Rece actually stole it from me. That's not true. I stole it from Rece. So, Rece, Michigan may be the best team in the country, and I think on Saturday they'll be facing a team that might be able to fog a competent mirror. But I feel like if I keep saying that too fast, I'm going to get myself in trouble. And that is Penn State here. Michigan about a 4.5-point favorite in this game. Thoughts on whether Michigan, Rece, can win this game by margin, and then we can go to the game that you guys will be at this weekend with Ole Miss and Georgia.
I actually think they can. Now, Penn State is really good on defense, and I do expect a relatively low-scoring game. So I think Penn State will play well defensively, but I just haven't seen enough from them in terms of making explosive plays. And I think that Michigan's a really hard team to make a living against, just sort of methodically moving the ball consistently against, and also with the limited opportunities you might get because they do that very well. So, I probably ought not be in the business of giving out picks, but I would, I think the number the last time I saw was 4.5. I'd probably lay the 4.5 with Michigan on the road because Penn State, while a good team, I'm not sure they're a great team, and I think Michigan potentially is a great team.
I think we're in early on this, and I think we're going to be right that they're as good as Milwaukee, who they lost to narrowly on opening night. People remember that opening night game, Lillard's first game where he played very well. I think they're as good as Milwaukee. I think they're as good as – they could be better than these teams, by the way, but let's at least start with as good as Milwaukee, Boston, maybe Denver, but I think when Murray's back, Denver's just the best team, and that's all that's going on there. But in this conversation, and they beat the Celtics last night, and it's still nah. So all these prices are they're just not moving. I mean, the Celtics are an incredibly big favorite to win the division still. You can find the Sixers plus 350 to win the Atlantic Division right now. They're the number one team in the conference currently. And it's oh, wow, but, Boston will get it. Really? We're sure Philly's, not really, really good based on what we've seen? That, stop me if this would make any sense. upgrading from Doc Rivers to championship winning Nick Nurse would be like a good idea. And jettisoning James Harden to the Clippers, who suck, by the way. And then, here, Tyrese Maxey, why don't you be the ball dominant guard? Why don't you take a lot more? Oh, this is actually going really good. Oh, remember Tyrese when you would have to sit in the corner because James Harden would run pick and roll at like the speed of molasses and everybody would get really frustrated? Okay, well, we don't have to do that anymore. Now it looks awesome. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. And Scal, who we have on the show all the time, was calling the game last night being like, as a spectator, man, this is so much better to have Tyrese Maxey instead of James Harden. There's so much more flow. It's just so much more interesting. So just the markets that aren't moving. Sixers to win the division. Sixers to win the conference, where it's like Celtics Bucks like even money-ish, Sixers 9-1. Really?
One of the games of the weekend coming up in Jacksonville this weekend. The Niners 3-point road favorites at the Jags. What do you like here, San Fran and Jacksonville?
So 3 straight losses for San Francisco. We've seen just market ratings based on closing lines. They're about 3.5 points shy of where they were before that losing streak started. A lot of that was fueled by injuries. Left tackle, Deebo Samuel, some other guys on the defense have been hurt. You now have Shanahan putting more emphasis on the defense to change back into what they were a year ago. We're seeing Steve Wilkes being moved around. A lot of pressure on that side, adding Chase Young. To me, everything sort of sorts itself out for the 49ers, and we're getting them a little bit underpriced against the Jags team that has beat up on some bad teams in the last couple of weeks and has seen their price be bet up a little bit. And so if those two sort of streaks were a little bit reversed, San Francisco 4.5, 5 wouldn't have been out of the question. Now we're down at the 3. To me, we're more likely to get a better game from the Niners than we are the Jags. So I'll take San Francisco laying 3.
Jalen Carter of the Eagles, minus 300. Devin Witherspoon of Seattle, plus 300. Brian Branch of Detroit at about 12-1. Will Anderson of Houston, 14-1. Anything cooking here or interesting here on defensive rookie of the year?
So Carter won every midseason piece of content, and that makes sense. I think everybody's kind of gushed over him for several weeks now that he's been so good at pressure rate, and they don't play him a ton, and maybe a sack number isn't big, but like everybody kind of, the consensus is that he's awesome and that Witherspoon is the consensus second choice, and the market reflects that. Just my only thing, which is kind of a continuation of what we've talked about, just it would be pretty, not easy, but it would be possible for someone to eclipse Carter's very low sack number in the second half of the season, potentially. So this is not, I think Stroud is more done than this is done. And I don't even mean because the price is more. I think Stroud actually might be more likely to win than his price. And maybe Carter's this likely because there's no contender yet. Just that, he's only ahead because everyone else is a 0, not that he's done a lot. So that's how I would put it, where Stroud has actually accomplished a lot. Carter, the sack number is really low. Just a name, I'll give a shout out to our guy Femi, who hosts a show over at VSiN. He and I talk about awards. I mentioned him earlier in the week, just because this was a name that he brought up that he's monitoring. Player that got bet a little bit, a player that came in third on a couple ballots. Byron Young, I think is the guy's name, the defensive end for the Rams, who was 150-1 in the market, going to play a lot in the second half of the season. Only behind Carter by a sack, I think, right now, or they're very close. You would want, if you were going to try to take aim at Carter with another player, you would obviously an edge would be an easy add. You would want someone who could for example, let's say Carter finished with 7 sacks and this guy has 10. Carter definitely wins. Does that make any logical sense to anybody, by the way, if that happens? That's still possible. We could still get that in the market. And everyone's going to yell pressure rate. Great. Voters still don't necessarily behave like that in terms of how they vote for stuff. They people who do stuff. That's what they like. And Carter looks awesome. But if the results aren't there, this kind of turns into Micah Parsons last year for Defensive Player of the Year, where the number just wasn't there and Bosa got a lot of sacks. And so Bosa ended up winning. Could see the same thing playing out. Just wanted to mention that name, big price, just something worth monitoring. I don't think there's a lot to add this week.